Hey, welcome back to Coliseum Forum. This week I am joined by, and I thought about how I was going to do your introduction, but you've done so much, so we're just going to go with like polymath Zeb Wells. How are you doing today, sir?
I'll take it. I'm doing great.
So, I mentioned there, very quickly, the polymath Zeb Wells. I mean, you've done a lot of stuff. You've been a director, a writer, a creator, a comics writer. I mean, you've kind of done basically everything, right?
Yeah, I've done all of that, and I think I've done comics the longest though. That was my first real paying creative job. So, and I'm a lifelong comics fan, so that'll always be right there in my resume. Comics writer for sure.
Well, I saw this interview with you, and I'm not sure. I think it might have been about the time that Supermansion premiered, or was like Supermansion was on the horizon. And I think they had asked you something to the effect of like, "Oh, well, why did you choose superheroes for your show?" And you're like, "Cause I just love superheroes. I like
Yeah,
looking at superheroes. I like watching superheroes. I like the colors of superheroes." So,
yeah,
so you're
yeah. Totally. That was one thing that when I was making Supermansion, I just kept remembering is that when I was a little kid and you were flipping around the channels and you went past Super Friends, like I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what those characters were named. All I knew is that I wanted to watch that. I wanted to experience that. I wanted to, it was something about the costumes and the colors popping that I just fell in love with, and I still to this day, I just love superheroes. I love how flamboyant they could be, how colorful, how simple they can be at times, how complicated. It just seems like you can do anything in that world.
So anybody that's watched Coliseum Forum before and has seen me interviewed, like Ed Brisson, Matt Rosenberg, any of those guys, they know I'm a huge X-Men fan, but specifically I'm a huge New Mutants fan. And we
Uh
have a
huh.
New Mutants Volume 3. I mean, pretty much thanks to you, right? Like that was your book.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it was probably Nick Lowe's idea. It was brought to me, and I thought that was exciting, and so I went back and reread all of the New Mutants stuff I could
Oh,
get my
wow.
hands on. Yeah, I read it all, and as I was reading, was making connections and trying to figure out where I wanted to go, and came up with a big, large story that I think we pretty much got to tell. I'm pretty happy. I think that's the longest run I've done, and I'm pretty happy with how it all came together. And it's been kind of fun because I do hear about that run a lot now. Certainly
Yeah.
more than I did when it was coming out. When it was coming out, I couldn't really tell if it was hitting or if people were enjoying it or paying attention
Right.
to it.
Right.
But I think that was 10 years ago now, or
Yeah.
maybe even more.
Yeah,
And
it's been a
so
minute.
yeah, and I think it's the fact that people still bring it up is really warms my heart because I just really was geeking out on Ileana's
Yeah, for sure.
storyline,
Yeah.
and I really, it was kind of an honor to bring that whole Elder Gods thing to a
Yeah.
close, and these things that had brought her so much trauma, and to like explore that trauma, but to also give her just a little bit of closure
Right.
at the end was a real honor and a pleasure because I love that character.
Well, so let's talk about this. And I know, like, you weren't directly involved, but I mean, there's a New Mutants movie out right now, right? Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I do want to see it though.
But I mean, like, if I were you, and this is just wildly different than I'm sure you're actually interact, but I would sit there like with my popcorn and be like, I did this way better. I did this. I already did
No,
it.
I'm never at risk of that. I'm way too self-critical to
So
ever think like that.
so jumping a decade ahead, like from your New Mutants run, now you're doing the Hellions, which anybody that knows the New Mutants know those two are kind of intertwined.
Yeah,
What's that like? How do you get involved with the Hellions and like the House and Powers kind of relaunch that Hickman's running over there?
yeah. I had just like dipped my toe back into comics. I was working on the Ant-Man miniseries with Dylan Burnett, and we started talking about Spider-Ham with Will Robson. But I don't even know if I had started those yet. Nick Lowe was, we were having lunch and he was trying to see if he could find a place for me at Marvel. And you could just tell when that House of X, Powers of X stuff was coming out that Hickman was he was taking a swing. You know, you
Yeah.
could tell that he was not phoning this in. He was trying something.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, let's see what this guy's got. And so I read the first issue, and like halfway through, I mean, it's like when you read a screenplay, you can tell like 2 pages into it if it's a good screenplay or not. Like
Right.
no screenplay becomes good on page 10.
Right.
It's either good or it's bad, and you
Right.
could just tell halfway through the level of thought that was put into it, and the world that he was building just instantly makes you start asking questions about how does this work? How does this work?
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, this would be so exciting to be a part of.
Right.
So through those other comics I was doing, I got invited to a Marvel creative retreat. And as soon as I could, I think it might have been the first time there was a break, I just took a beeline for Hickman and was like, hey, I heard you're having an X-Men summit next week. You know, what if I was to come to that? And he was like, well, I'm not in charge of that, psycho. But if you're asking if you can do an X book, then we can probably work something out. So then it was just a matter of pitching him an idea for a book. And I loved the idea of these heroes and villains living together on Krakoa because again, it just raises so many questions. Like, how does this work? And I wanted to dig into how that would work. And I think thematically in doing that, you get to ask all these really interesting questions about what makes someone bad.
Yeah.
You know, how much empathy should we, you know, I wanted to explore like how much extreme empathy can we put on these people that are supposedly bad? And maybe we understand that most of the time people aren't bad. They've been deeply traumatized and don't necessarily know how to deal with it, or the world has sort of beat them up, and their reaction is certainly not a good reaction, but maybe you can understand their behavior a little bit more. And so those are all themes that I thought would just make a big hearty meal and would be fun to dive into. And then and I don't know why I've always had a affinity for John Greycrow, but I just love his look. I love his outfit. I love that he's so irredeemable. Empath is such a jerk. And I know it's asking a lot of readers to go along with me with Nanny and Orphan Maker, but I mean, even then it was like, let's dig in. Let's get into the psychology of this stuff. What is going on with that relationship? Let's see what's up.
And I think that's one of the things that like fans are really responding to with the X books. I mean, with you with Hellions and New Mutants and obviously the main title is that, like, you know, for years and years, you know, 60 years, people had this idea of what the X-Men are, and then you guys are exploring something completely different with what the X-Men are now, right? Like these guys are making their own civilization. They have their own rules, like, so, you know, you can't compare it to even like, you know, regular Homo sapien relationship just because you guys are something different now, right?
Like X-Men, it was always, you know, they have this gene that makes them Homo superior, but the thing that always allowed you to read X-Men comics with sort of a warm fuzzy feeling was this idea that they protect a world that hates them. Was there always their manifesto is that you can be as mean to them as you want, but they're going to be the bigger person.
Right.
They're going to turn the other cheek and protect you. And then what Hickman did is he yanked that safety net out of it. And it's suddenly they're like, okay, see ya. We're over here doing what's best for us, and we're not considering what's best for humanity as a whole. And that is an unpleasant, dangerous idea. There's something about that feels very exciting and unsafe. You know, I don't know if I like morally the direction the X-Men are going in.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Like, you know, I've been an X-Men fan my whole life, and I'm reading what you're doing in Hellions and like trying to make these characters that we all know are like not great be relatable, right? Or you know, what's going on in the main X title or any of the other titles. And I'll be honest, like even in like Marauders, like stuff's happening and I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. Like or like, no, this is not. But then I'm like, well, but this is like this is the thing. This is the whole idea of the book is like these guys, they're creating their own thing. This is for mutants. It's not for Billy or, whoever, their mutants are creating their own thing, and I think you guys, it's been wonderful so far. Like you guys are killing it.
Yeah, it's like some of the books are uncomfortable to read. Like you said, you don't know if you like what is
Right.
happening, but it's engaging. I just find it so compelling and engaging, and I don't think you get to take chances with characters that are that popular
Right.
very often. I think Hickman leveraged the cachet that he had in the Marvel universe to do something very unsafe.
Yeah.
And I am just so glad and honored that I get to play in this little pocket that he's created that may never happen again,
Yeah.
and who knows how long it'll last and if it'll ever happen again. But for now, something unsettling and uncomfortable and a little dangerous is happening in the X books, and it's just an exciting time.
And I think post Giant Size X-Men, I think when Chris Claremont shows up and John Byrne, those guys, I think people in that era would probably maybe describe it the same way. Like for
Yeah.
me, this feels like, yeah, this is the natural evolution of X-Men, Hellions, everybody. Like this is where they should have been, maybe even a decade ago. This is crazy.
Yeah.
It's been awesome to be an X-Men fan. You know what I mean? For the last year,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
And what I also love about it is it does synthesize the decades of X-Men comics that come before it. When you want to do like a new start or a launch like this, you can either try to simplify everything and say, hey, we're just going to focus on these 5 characters. Please forget everything else that happened.
Right.
Or the hard version is you wade through 50 years of continuity and say, okay, how do I synthesize all of this stuff into something new? And that's what Hickman did. He took the hard way, and this brand new thing isn't detached from everything that came before. It builds on it in a
Right.
very interesting way.
So with Hellions, well, first, that's probably my favorite. I mean, I wouldn't call them superheroes, but favorite like comic book team name ever. And I was so stoked when they first solicited your book because it was just an opportunity for me to talk about the Hellions again.
Yeah.
So you had this idea. You had this idea where for the Hellions. I'm guessing you pitched it. Did you get to go to that X-Men retreat?
No, I did not. And he probably needed to do a background check at that
No,
point.
fair. Was that the first time you'd ever met Jonathan Hickman?
It was, yes.
Okay. So now I get the psychopath remark. So never met John.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But
And
I mean,
I hadn't written comics in like 6 years, and he probably didn't know what I was doing at the
right.
conference, and
Right.
suddenly I'm there. Hey, how about I tag along on this X retreat?
So, but I mean, you're not just doing Hellions, which by the way has been awesome. Fans have responded to it, at least in our shops. We sell out of it pretty regularly.
Great.
But you're also doing Heroes at Home, which is kind of a cool initiative.
Yeah,
How
that
did
was
that
another Nick Lowe thing where he just said that they had this idea they wanted to try, and could I come up with some, just some short little concepts that the artist could do. I think they had done something before with cats, the
Yeah.
Instagram thing, and I'm not saying the name because I don't want to butcher the pronunciation of the
The artist.
because I just, it's one of those terrifying moments when you realize you haven't ever said a word out loud before.
Oh yeah,
So you
no.
don't-
This is my favorite part about
you don't
doing
want
these.
to wade into it.
There's so many creators. I've only ever read your guys' names where it's like,
Yeah,
I was talking to Matthew Rosenberg, right? And that's an easy one. But apparently him and like James Tynan are friends. And I was like, so James Tynion? And he's like, it's Tynan. Or like Ed Brisson. I've been running around calling him Ed Bryson for years. Like,
Right.
Yeah, so I'm right there with you with that. How do you say it?
But so they wanted to be like 9-panel comics so we could put them on Instagram as squares, and then do covers later. And I think it was just a lot of fun because everybody had been cooped up in their homes and apartments, so there was just a lot of little bits I saw, and then I could sort of go back to my Robot Chicken roots because it felt like just short little sketches that needed to be done. And so I just wrote a bunch of pitches, and they got approved, and I wrote them up and drawn up, and then yeah, once that first one got posted on Instagram, it seemed to take off pretty well.
Was that the Captain America one?
I think the Spider-Man one
The
was
Spider-Man
the
one.
first one.
Because the
Yeah.
Captain America one actually caused trouble in my home. So I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. This is a true story. They're probably watching right now. I have a Captain America shield, like a scale Captain America shield I've had for 15 years. So way before I ever had kids. We looked at that comic because I was showing it to them as they were coming out because that's right up their alley. And then for a day, all I heard was how much they wanted to eat spaghetti out of Daddy's Captain America shield. And like they finally dropped it after a couple days, but we haven't circled back to look at those comics since because we're not going to eat spaghetti out of a Captain America shield.
But come on, if you do take a picture for me, please.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. But I don't want to ruin this shield because I've had it for like 15 years. So this is something I'm really interested in because we've mentioned this. You've worked everywhere. I mean, you've been a director, a writer, producer, comics creator. What's it like working in TV, like writing scripts for TV, like for example, Robot Chicken, versus like scripting a comic? Like how different are those two things?
The actual product that you have at the end is pretty similar. As far as like the end result, you have a script. A TV script kind of looks like a comic book script, but TV, there are just a lot more people involved in that script.
Okay.
For good and for bad.
Right.
Like, it's great to have a room of writers and writers throwing you ideas all day, and it's not all completely on you to come up with the ideas. And then in ideas being thrown out, even if you don't like an idea, sometimes it leads to another thought that you had. And
right.
So there is a certain magic of working with other writers, and even getting notes from executives. I've never really hated that, because a lot of times you get a note and you swear to the heavens that they don't understand your vision, and then you say, okay, I'll try to make it work, and then you write it, and you end up liking what you write.
Right.
Sometimes you don't, but the collaboration of it is a little bit more work, but it's a lot of fun. And then with comics, there is something, again, good and bad. There's something awesome to sitting down, and once you have your outline approved by your editor, it's just you, and you sit there and you can really like laser in.
Right.
You get into a flow, and there's something really meditative about it that feels great. On the other hand, if you get stuck and there's no one to sort of talk it out with and get the ideas rolling and out of your head, you can fall into a hole for a couple of days and become convinced that you've chosen the wrong career.
It gets that bad sometimes?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Oh, you have no idea, Billy. Yeah, there's some pretty dark days. It doesn't happen as much now. I've gotten my process wrangled a little bit better, but there's just a lot of psychology to writing that you have to really be conscious of and keep an eye on, so you don't get too down on yourself.
Okay. I mean, it's funny because like, we've talked to artists as well, and artists say like the same thing. Like, unless you have unless you've got that process like focused in, like you're going to drive yourself crazy because like you've got deadlines looming, and it's like, it's you at the table trying to draw. And yeah, I mean, it's weird.
Yeah. It's a bummer. I mean, I think you grow up and you see these writers that you admire, and the artists see the artists you admire, and you just assume everything's easy for everybody, and that if you're talented, you shouldn't need discipline. It should just fly. The art should just fly out of you.
Right.
But that's one thing I really realized the last 5 years is developing your process and developing your discipline is the most important thing you can do for your art. Like that is a part of your art that you do need to build,
right.
Like you would build a script or build a comic page. You build your process.
So at this point, you're back in comics, which is great. We missed you. Hellions is awesome. Like I said, besides the slight hang up in my own personal house, the Heroes at Home was really cool. Any chance you're going back to TV anytime soon?
Yeah, I actually was a writer on She-Hulk for Disney Plus.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, the head writer, Jessica Gao, I had worked with her a bunch of times in the past. So when she when she was hired on as head writer, I not so subtly begged her to, much like approaching Jonathan Hickman, I begged Jessica to get me on the show, even though all my credits were in animation and comic books. And they gave me a shot, and I had a great time on that. So hopefully I'll get more TV stuff going. It's, obviously a weird time right now.
Yeah,
where,
for sure.
Where, I'm really happy that I have comics to work on during this pandemic. The pandemic hit during She-Hulk, so we were doing that remotely for a while.
Yeah.
And the first couple weeks of the shutdown, I was, it seemed like a lot of people were getting snow days and I wasn't getting any. I still had to work, and I was like, oh, this sucks. Why do I have to work? And then like a month into the shutdown, you're like, oh, thank God I have a job. I can't,
No, I'm right there with you. It's the same
experience. This is not ending. Yeah. Because you guys are in the comic industry. You guys had a crazy time.
Oh, it's crazy. So we,
sure there.
For a while, like we were hanging out in Florida, it was like, kind of hung out and waited to see where things would go before the shutdown. But then they were like, okay, everybody shuts down. So that's like, we have 8 stores. That's 8 full store staffs. Oh. I'm the director of operations, but I was kind of in your boat. There were still things that had to be done for the company. And so I stayed on and kind of like was like a ghost in a comic book shop, which was kind of surreal, just the things that needed to be done in each store, just floating around Florida. And like you said, the first couple of weeks, you're like, man, everybody's got this cool snow day. This is, and I'm stuck here and then like after like a month, you're like, holy crap, like glad I'm working.
This is real.
Yeah, this is real.
Yeah.
So, with She-Hulk, I mean, it's still in production and everything, right? Like, we're getting the She-Hulk show, I'm pretty sure.
I'm done with my time on the show. Yeah. I think that if I mention anything else about it, I get
it's like the assassins.
They kill me. Yeah, like I've been so afraid of like even tweeting about it. I never once tweeted that I was even working on it just because I just didn't want to screw it up. You might be the first one that I've told out in the world that I'm working on it. So
no, that's awesome.
Or that I worked on it.
I won't press you anymore on it. That's a really cool thing we just learned. And I'm sure you've got like a dump truck sized NDA that you're under, but
right, yeah, exactly.
Can you answer one? Is it as cool as I think all of us hope it's going to be?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. No worries there.
I know you'd mentioned kind of because we do a little pre-interview for anybody that wonders like how this gets started. Like he doesn't just show up and we're like, hey, welcome to Coliseum Forum. We do a little bit of pre-interview. I know you said you've got some maybe potential other stuff on the horizon, maybe with one of the publishers that I'm not going to say. And then you got some creator-owned stuff. Like with the creators-owned stuff, like, well, let me ask you about that directly. Do you have a preference when you're doing writing? Do you like the stuff that you do your own, or do you like the stuff you do at the big two? Like where are you at on that?
Well, what's interesting is that this is the first stuff I've done creator-owned since I started. And I started writing comics in 2002, I think. So it's something, I was just such a Marvel fan growing up that there's something safe and fun about working at Marvel that it just scratches a deep itch that I have to work at Marvel. But I really wanted to kind of push myself and see what I came up with if there weren't, if there weren't characters that, because when you're working at Marvel, and I take it seriously, you're stewards of these characters.
Yeah,
you want to continue. You want people that read your comics to feel the same way that you felt when you were reading the comics.
Yeah.
I love those characters, and I want to see them brought to life in a good way. And so, again, I wanted to pull that safety net out. And like I've grown up, all the writers I love have done a lot of creator-owned stuff. So I was asking, it's kind of weird to me that I haven't done it yet either. Bit, so it is a little strange. So I just wanted to get in there, and so here I am. And I've written a bunch of scripts, and one of them is being drawn at the moment, and I don't have publishers yet. So once I have like a couple issues under my belt, I'm just going to shop it around and hopefully people return my calls.
Well, I mean, you're Zeb Wells. I mean, you're good at what you do, man. But if you know, say 6 months from now we see like the first creator owned Zeb Wells stuff coming out, you want to come back and do another forum so we can talk about
Oh,
that?
I'd love to. Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, I know you are a busy man. You have things to do, but I appreciate you stopping by today. I'm gonna let you get back to your super cool life in New York City, doing all the super cool New York City things that you guys get to do.
All right, man.
But again, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, love to come back whenever. It's good chatting with you, Billy.
Guys, we have Hellions in store now. If it's not on your sub, get on subscription at Coliseum Comics. If not, swing through by the store. We'll have a copy for you. You're missing out on good comics. So